Well, hey,
Hey,
how was your week? I know you had a busy week with work. You had
I
people in
did.
town.
I did. Had a very busy week, but it was really good and always good to see my team.
Yeah.
And so that was nice. How
Yeah.
about you?
I had a busy week too. I was out of town this weekend. I went to go see my youngest son off at college. And so that was fun, but I was just, gone all weekend and
Yeah.
had a lot going on last week. And I'll obviously have stuff going on this week because I'll be out of town next week. So we're doing
Yes,
double duty this week, and I've got a lot of editing to do and stuff around here, but it'll at least make my week go by fast.
it
So
absolutely will. And I think the beach is a good reward. So
yes,
that'll be really nice to,
yes.
to actually go down there and
Yeah,
relax.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I know the weather will be so nice. I've been checking the weather app for like the past 2 weeks. You know how you can look ahead
Hmm.
to see what the weather's going to be? So I've been looking at it. Initially, it looked like it was going to be a lot of rain. I
Oh,
was like, I don't
no.
care. So now
Yeah.
it's starting to clear up. So I
A,
think it'll be good weather. But anyway,
a
so.
bad day at the beach is better than any day at
Mm
home,
hmm.
right?
Mm hmm.
Yeah. I've been threatening to go, but I've got so much travel coming up, so
Yeah.
I need to figure out a time when I can do that.
Yeah. Well, probably perfect timing. But tonight, our episode is going to be based around faith. And we've said before we were trying to steer away from certain subjects,
Sure.
religion and politics and that sort of thing. And we kind of, throw comments in every now and then. But I think tonight I'm anticipating us not going like super deep.
Mhm.
But I do think it's still an important aspect of
Yes.
our lives, even though it may look different for each of us.
Mhm.
But I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to,
Sure.
whether it's just in the past, the present, or what is to come. And so I know for me personally, I've struggled on and off throughout my life. I hope I don't get upset tonight. Earlier tonight, I was venting to Mandy. The tears were about to come. So I don't know about tonight, but anyway, um, I've struggled on and off with my faith for years, and I don't know how common that is for people.
I think not only is everybody in a different place with their faith, their religion, their relationship with God, but I think also you're right. There are people who have a really hard time and they run from God. And
Yeah.
then they have a really hard time and they cling to Him.
Mhm.
And so I think everybody operates a little bit differently. But I thought I would kind of start us off just by reading, like, what is the definition of faith? And I thought it was interesting because the dictionary gives two different definitions.
Oh, really?
So the first one, which I think we all can relate to, whether you're religious or not, is complete trust or confidence in someone or something. So, an example is this restores one's faith in politicians. So, I think we can all say, well, we have faith. And not even talking about from a religious
Mhm.
sense,
Right.
or I have faith in this person,
Right.
or every time I sit down, I know I have faith in that chair. I
Right.
know it's going to catch me,
Yeah.
right? But the other definition is a strong belief in the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual conviction rather than proof. And then that example is bereaved people who have shown supreme faith. And so I think knowing that there's two sides to the coin kind of helps us bridge that conversation.
So when I was young, I'm talking about as a child on
Mhm.
into teenage years, a church was not my thing.
Mhm.
It wasn't anything that I wanted to really be a part of. I didn't connect to it. My first memory of church was the church by your house where we grew up.
Mm.
It was an older white church. They had a vacation Bible school. So
Mhm.
I would have had to have already been living where we grew up. So I'm guessing I was probably either about to go into first grade or I was like first grade age. And I remember us going to that church's vacation Bible school. I still have one of the like sponges that I painted.
Mhm.
We did like watercolor. I think I still have it in some of my boxes. The first experience that I remember was going to that church for VBS. And then when I was a little bit older, we tried one of the bigger churches down the parkway.
Mm.
A lot of people that we knew went there, and they even had a little school there. And I think we visited one time. I think they were speaking tongues the day that we went, and
Mhm.
that just wasn't our thing. So I don't remember us ever going back. And then we finally ended up at the church, one of the churches in our hometown when I was
Mhm.
in high school. We have a lot of memories at that church. My
Mhm.
mom was involved. She was, a member of that church until they moved to this side of town. So anyway, but even then in high school, I hated going to church. I think because I was made to go.
Mhm.
And when I was there, I just wasn't really connecting with anyone. I
Mhm.
hated being part of the youth. I
Yeah.
didn't feel, and it was people that went to our school.
Yeah.
But I just did not wanna be there, and so it wasn't until, like, my early 20s where I just came around and got saved and was just really big into my faith and church,
Mhm.
and from that point on, I have had good moments and bad moments, high points and low points, but that's kind of, like, where my journey started and what it looked like. So, I wasn't one of those super active kids that grew up in the church and was always doing something
Yeah.
and anything like that. So
Well, my story is a little similar to yours, except, and this is my opinion, guys. So, I always have to have a caveat,
yeah.
but this is my story. This is not throwing shade at anybody or
No,
their
no.
denomination, but I grew up very conflicted. So, my parents, when they went, which was rare, went to a little Presbyterian church. And it was, for those of you that know, there's PCA, there's PCUSA. It was the more liberal of the two. And I wouldn't say that I had a liberal upbringing for what it's worth. I'm just
Yeah,
telling the story.
yeah.
But it was a really small church, not a lot of people, but there were some people, my parents' age, and we'll put a pin in that because that's important later. And we didn't really have enough to have like a little Sunday school or kids' church or anything. It was a really small church. And so I grew up sitting in a chair in the service with my hands folded and like I was listening.
Mhm.
Um, and then my dad's parents, my grandmother is still alive today, but they were more Southern Baptist. And when I would go and stay with them, I went to their church and I did VBS there some, with the little flour cookie on your pinky and the red Kool-Aid. Everybody
Yeah,
can relate to that
yeah.
in the South. But um, I felt like those sermons were hellfire and brimstone. It was turn or burn.
Mhm.
Everything that I heard, and I didn't identify with it. I just didn't. And like I said, we went very sporadically to the Presbyterian church, so I may have gone Easter and Christmas. It
Yeah.
was just not a normal part of my upbringing. But I always, had a little bit of knowledge about Jesus and about Christianity from my other grandparents. It was just not a huge part of my life. And so I was a very rebellious, I don't have to tell you this, but I was a very rebellious teenager. I did have some friends that had a little bit more of a relationship with youth and church and all of those things. And I'm very grateful for that because I look back now and I went to lock ins and
Yeah.
went to different things at those big churches.
Mhm.
And they always invited me, and they probably knew because my parents were unchurched and then divorced and all of that. So I'm grateful for that. But I would say when I was in my early 20s too, I happened upon a church. Ironically, it was one of the churches that you happened upon too on 280,
Mhm.
and they had a Friday night service. And this is where it gets really conflicting. So I had started going back to that little bitty church. I had really never left. I just would go every couple of years
Yeah.
just to make sure
You
I
didn't
was
transfer
good.
your membership as you had to do.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. But I was actually being, and I don't know if you know this. So I was 21 years old, had gone through something pretty traumatic for a 21-year-old, and um, was being ordained as an elder in
Mm.
that church. I didn't know if you knew that or not, but it was around that time that my roommate and I moved across town and we moved to 280. And I was still going to that little church and taking all my classes to be confirmed or whatever, and became an elder in the Presbyterian church.
Oh, how funny. I did not
And
know that.
started going to this church on 280 on Friday nights. That was a lot more contemporary.
Mhm.
You know, my minister in the Presbyterian church wore a long black robe, looked like a priest.
Yeah.
We did the doxology, we did all the things, right? So here I was again, conflicted, going to this church
Mhm.
and then seeing something totally different. And
Right.
my faith grew a lot then. Fast forward, I would say I was in church, visiting a lot, had my kids. You know, church was a part of our lives, but I think the fire had kind of gone out.
Yeah.
And my fire came back when I came in 2008 on Easter to the church where I go now. And I feel like my faith has grown stronger ever since I've been there.
Mhm.
So, a little bit of a strange
Yeah.
story.
When I was going to the Baptist church in our hometown,
Mhm.
I don't know if I really knew that it would affect me the way it did later, but there, you sing out of the hymnal,
Mhm.
okay? And you had the choir up, um, singing as well, so there wasn't any big loud music like there is with
Mhm.
the contemporary churches now, but even to this day, I love a hymn. Like, I love to open up that hymnal
Mhm.
and read some of the classics,
Mhm.
"Just As I Am," I think was one of them, um, that always stuck with me, and I don't know if it's just because it was habit, and I tend to be someone I can be very nostalgic, and I
Yes.
like, the OG of everything. How it
Mhm.
started out is, like, where I am connected to,
Yeah.
and so maybe that's just some of it, but I also think for me, it was just more pure,
Mhm.
um, growing up in the church that I did because that's all I really knew, and so the times that I did connect, that's where it started. It started with the preacher up front and the choir back behind him, and
Mhm.
you reading singing out of the hymnals, and it was interesting that years later, when I joined the mega church, it was the church at Brook Hills. I'll just say that because I'm very proud of that church and my time there for me. It
Yes.
was a huge, huge time in my life. I've talked about that on here before, but I just wonder, do I prefer the smaller churches that we went to that's got like maybe 350, 400 members, or the big mega churches? Because it is different. And I had said before I started going to Brook Hills, I'll never join a mega church. It was just too big for me. It didn't seem
Mhm.
like it would be intimate enough.
Mhm.
The older churches, the smaller churches, you go to Sunday school, or at the mega churches, it's small group. Just even the wording of it
Mhm.
gives a different connotation. So I know I'm rambling, but I thought I would never be that person.
Mhm.
And I ended up becoming that person. But a lot of it was because of David Platt, who was the
Mhm.
pastor there at that time.
Yes.
And I was very fortunate with the small group that I got connected in because that was my intimacy. I
Mhm.
had David Platt on stage letting me know what the word said. His style of preaching is my style. I think we've talked before about I like the nitty-gritty. I like to know the whys and really get into understanding in depth, and that's how he preached. I think I connect more when I just get in depth on
Mhm.
on anything. I really, really grew in my spiritual journey
Mhm.
when I was there because I learned a lot from David and I learned a lot from the women that I was around. And
Mhm.
I won't harp on that because I have harped about that before on here many times. But
Well, it's a pivotal moment
yes,
in your walk.
and it is important to tell because it allows other people to know you can find your people
Mhm.
if you try.
Mhm.
It doesn't take much. You just got to put yourself out there, which is what I did. And I was
Yeah.
very uncomfortable when I did it. But I did that and God answered and put me exactly where I needed to be.
Yes.
I will always believe that for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
So you can find intimacy at a mega church if
you
that's
can.
your route.
You can. And when I say small, I don't mean 300 people.
Right.
I bet you there were 35 to 45 on a Sunday. And I don't know if it's still there. I haven't been out there in
Yeah.
a long time. It may have
Hmm.
be torn down, but being in that little teeny tiny church and then going to a mega church, I'm like you. I could have never,
Yeah.
I did not want anything to do with it,
Hmm.
especially 2,000 people singing, yelling,
Yeah.
whatever. I was like, because I'm used to,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
and I really loved it at Church of Brook Hills. And I went there on Friday nights. They had like a contemporary young person service.
Hmm.
And so I did that for a long time and finally talked to my church and said, I can't be an elder here. I feel called over here. And
What year
so
was that you transferred to Brook Hills?
95 or
Oh, okay.
96.
That's much earlier than me then.
Yeah. But I don't even know if David was there
No.
then. I don't think he was.
Mm-mm.
But anyway, it was guitars on stage, drums. I mean, that
Yeah.
was nothing that we were used to.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Right.
But it was a great time for me too. Anyway, after that, I got married and, we had moved around and been to different churches. But at the end of the day, 2008 is when I think I maybe went all in for the first time. And for those of you listening, I'm sure you have your own opinions about, Church of the Highlands if you live around here, and that's fine. But I will tell you, it changed my life. And I was a nervous wreck. I was not in a good place. I thought, look what the cat drug in, but
Hmm.
I'm going.
Right.
And this was on Easter. And I went and I just was like, God, you're going to have to give me a sign. I was so, I'm not uncomfortable, that I'm so outgoing. We'll
Hmm.
talk to a brick wall. I was so uncomfortable. I think I had built it up in my mind of what it was going to be, but I knew I needed to be there. And I'm like, God, you're going to have to give me a sign or I'm leaving. Like, I'm not
Did you go
staying
by
here.
yourself?
I did. And I said, I'm not staying here. And so this girl came up to me because I had gotten there early and, it started filling in and packed. She came up to me and she said, Hey, are you new here or something? You
Hmm.
could see, I guess, the lost look in my
Right.
eyes. And I said, Well, yeah, I'm visiting. This is my first time. And she's like, Well, I'm Mandy. And she stuck her hand out to shake my hand.
How
And I
funny.
said, I'm Mandy. And she goes, No way. And then, she said, Well, I live in blank. And I said, Oh my God, I live in blank. And so that was my sign
Hmm.
that I was supposed to be there. And things have changed over the years. I haven't been able to go very much recently as I've got some um, sick and aging family members that I go visit on Sundays. But things have changed. I mean, back then the format was okay teaching on Sunday, and that's, again, that's nothing against our pastor. It was more of a, I would call, watered down, easy to understand message on
Yes.
Sunday because it was really for the unchurched.
Hmm. Right.
However, we had Wednesday night and he went really deep. And I loved it. And so I was there every Sunday, every Wednesday night. And then somewhere along the way, that kind of changed. And it was like first Wednesday is what we have now. So it's one Wednesday a month and it's very in depth. It's a lot more teaching.
Mhm.
But he's done some fabulous services. And then a little over a year ago, he kind of stepped down and took on a different leadership role in the church. And then we have a younger pastor. And I like him, but I haven't really given him enough of a chance because I haven't been there.
Yeah.
But like you, I would have never gone to a mega church, but I've led a lot of small groups. I've been in small groups,
Mhm.
and it really does grow your
It
faith
does.
to be with the right people.
Right. And I think it's important that you have something other than your church service time,
Mm-hmm.
that hour
Yes.
during the week where you're going and listening to a sermon, but you've got people that you can connect with and hopefully trust.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of times you become friends with these people
Mm-hmm.
and you go through life experiences with these people.
Yeah.
So it can be more than just a good small group to
Mm-hmm.
go to get together once a week. And I know some will meet at home and they might do Bible studies together. Some people meet at a restaurant or a
Mm-hmm.
bowling alley, and it's more of a fun setting and just
Mm-hmm.
getting to know people, and all that's fine. But mine was where we met at someone's house every
Mm-hmm.
week, and we all just brought breakfast items, and we would share anything that we needed to share, and then we kinda went into whatever it was we were looking at, what verse or verses that day. So and that's just what I needed, and that was
Mm-hmm.
good for me at that time. Do you have, like, a favorite author or pastor? I just say other than David, like, I really like, for a female, Kay Arthur. I don't know if I've ever mentioned her to you before, if we've talked about her much. Reminds me a lot of David in the way that they teach and
Mm-hmm.
how they teach, because they're really in depth, like this inductive type, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, reasoning and really digging down to the root and the foundation and understanding what it's telling you. I just soak up that kind of stuff. So Kay Arthur is one of my favorite females.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people like Beth Moore and have done the Beth Moore studies. I
Yeah.
don't know that I ever did one of hers. I know she was always doing women's conferences and being a part of
Mm-hmm.
that. I was geared more towards Jenny Allen. I've done
Mm-hmm.
like 3 or 4 of hers.
So I think Beth Moore, I've done some of her studies. I think I've been to one of her conferences, if I remember correctly, because there were several ladies there.
Yeah.
But I think she's gone off the deep end, and I'm not so sold on her material anymore. But for me, I listen to a lot of clips, and my favorite right now, the one that I feel is most identifiable to me, is based on her life experiences, is Lisa TerKeurst.
Mhm.
And I've read many of her books. I've done several of her Bible studies. I've led several of her Bible studies. And that to this day is what got me through the hardest time in my life,
Mhm.
is her being able to apply practical knowledge and biblical truth to some things. And then Pastor Philip Anthony, right now, I'm really stuck on him. If you haven't listened to him and you love to hear on fire messages and teaching, he's based out of Atlanta, and he is 2819 is his church. And he's really good and preaches a lot about the end times. And he wears all black all the time. He says, "Die to self." And he's got an incredible
Hmm.
past too. He's very practical knowledge. He's on fire, and I really like to listen to him. But there's so many good
Yeah, there
speakers.
is. One reason I think a lot of women will, um, relate to Lisa TerKeurst is because she's been through
Mm-hmm.
some things.
Yes.
And so you know that you're hearing not only God's word from her and like just evangelical
Mm-hmm.
point of view, but also I've lived this. I
Mm-hmm.
know how all of you women feel that are listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can it's like in a way you trust that person more
Yes.
because it's a vulnerability that you both share.
Mhm.
It doesn't really matter how famous someone is or not. We all go through the same junk,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
I don't think I've done one of her Bible studies. But another male that I've always liked is Matt Chandler. I don't know if you know who
Mm.
Matt Chandler is.
Mhm.
He kind of is the same way. Now, he's not as in depth as a David Platt,
Mhm.
but I love his delivery. I
Mhm.
love how he translates his message. And I think he's funny. He's relatable. Not that any of that necessarily matters, but sometimes, you just connect with people.
Keeps you
Yeah.
engaged.
And
Yeah.
so I've always, always really, really liked him. I need to get back and listen to some of his stuff again,
Mhm.
listen to some of David's stuff. And it reminded me, and I've not thought about this forever, but there was something called The Elephant Room that came out. Gosh, it was I think right before Jeffrey and I maybe started dating. So like around 2010, maybe
Mhm.
2011, something like that. And it was a group of pastors, and they all got together, and they basically had different roundtable, like, discussions. James McDonald, I think, was the main person that did it, but Mark Driscoll was part of
Mhm.
that, and I know Mark Driscoll's had some of his issues, but and I understand if people have a thought on, "Well, I'm not gonna follow any pastor that's had issues or trouble,"
Mhm.
and I get it, but I think there's some that truly redeem themselves and that some that's not, but
Sure.
anyway. So, Mark Driscoll was part of it, David Platt was part of it, Matt Chandler, I think Stephen Furtick was part of it,
Mhm.
TD Jakes may have been. So, I'm not necessarily fans of all of those guys, but it was just really interesting, like, to hear all of them kinda pick each other's brains
Mhm.
or see the differences and similarities and commonalities that they each had. But you can actually find it on YouTube.
Mhm.
I think they've got it broken up in different sessions. And I thought, I need to go back and watch that. But it's also interesting because this is where it really gets down to the nitty gritty for me. You sometimes just don't know the slight differences in the
Mhm.
whole umbrella under Christianity. Because there's so many different types of denominations that fall under that umbrella, but they all kind of believe something different, which is
Mhm.
interesting to me. But I think some of those guys are more Calvinistic,
Mhm.
like a Matt Chandler, and David Platt has some Calvinistic views, and like one of his mentors, John Piper, who I like too. It's those guys where I don't know if I necessarily believe in what separates the 2, free will or no free will.
Mhm.
But it's interesting that even if you don't believe in what was already meant to be versus free will, that you can still hear some of these men and really relate to what they're saying,
Yeah.
even if you just have a difference in that one thing.
Well, and I think you brought up 2 really good points there while you were talking about the elephant room. We talked about TD Jakes or Stephen Furtick or whoever that maybe people like or don't like, or maybe they've had a past or something has happened
Yeah.
like Mark Driscoll. So
Well, Matt Chandler too.
I would say that number one, people often lose their faith based on thinking that pastors and leaders are infallible.
Yeah.
And they think, well, he's a preacher, he's a pastor. If he's done it, then, what's any hope
Right.
for me and why try and all those things. And I think we, the church, have not done a good job to the outsiders because they think we're a bunch of hypocrites.
Yeah.
Well, we are.
Yeah.
We are. The inside of the church is the exact same as the outside of the church. They're all imperfect people just trying
Yeah.
to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And again, is every person in church trying to do the right thing? Maybe not. Probably not.
Yeah.
There are people that have wrong motives, that you could say the same about teachers or nurses or police officers or whatever else. And so I think, secondly, they have a target on their back,
Right.
not only from people, but I firmly believe from Satan. And so, why would he want them to have a perfect life and live a great life that they're not doing anything, that they
Yeah.
shouldn't be doing, or
Yeah.
that is a sin, or that's publicly called out? And so I do think, just like college coaches, and they speak out and they say, I'm a Christian, and they pray before practice and all that. And then the next thing you know, they're having an
Right.
affair, calling a stripper,
Right.
whatever it
Yeah.
is. And so I think they have a target on their back. But I also think, religion is man made, and a relationship with God and a relationship with Jesus is how you know the truth from not.
Yeah.
The truth is only discerned in your spirit by reading the word.
Yeah.
And I am talking to myself. I read my word every day, but I just gobble up when I hear a good message. And there's nothing wrong with listening to messages, and there's nothing wrong with being fed, but you have to feed yourself.
Sure.
And you can get misled by truth, and you can get so down in the weeds about free will
Yeah.
or the end times, or there's going to be an apocalypse, or no, there's not. And, we can argue amongst ourselves instead of really reading the word and letting it speak to you and you figuring out what it really says.
Yeah. But I think sometimes things become too much, in my opinion. And it's not everywhere, but when you've got too much of the frou-frou
Mm-hmm.
and too much of distractions at work, at church, and maybe those are just my distractions.
Mm-hmm.
I think again it goes back to when I was growing up. It was very structured. You did the same thing
Mm-hmm.
every time you went to church. You knew what it was going to be. There was nothing for show. The choir got up there and sang. Your organist played a song while they sang, or the pianist or whatever. Somebody might have gotten up and sang a solo, but there wasn't a lot of just like grandeur with the band and the lights and the smoke, all that kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but for me and how I receive things, I don't like all of the fluff, as
Mm-hmm.
I like to say. Sometimes it's not needed. Be
Mm-hmm.
simple, basic, foundational teachings is enough, and it should be enough. And I think maybe that is just what I prefer. And like with anything, it's not just religion. The bigger something gets, the more money it makes or the more people it brings in, we kind of lose sight of what the intentions were.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the church needs to be bringing in people, but you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we lose sight of what the purpose is.
Very good points. It's kind of how I feel about Christmas.
Yeah.
It's so over commercialized, and it becomes about what gifts you give to people. And again, I'm not saying it's wrong to give gifts. I love to give gifts. Like, it makes me happy.
Yeah.
To give somebody something that I think they would want.
Sure.
But Christmas has been so commercialized that nobody thinks about what it's actually
Yeah.
about. And I'm going to butcher these verses, and I know it. I know I am. So keep your opinions to yourself. Let us not give up worshiping together or getting together or whatever.
Sure.
I do think it has a place. And I think I get it too with the first time I walked in the church and saw the guitar on the stage and the smoke machine and the drums and
Yeah.
all of that. I mean, it is a shocker, but I think if that is what stirs someone's soul to worship, dance like David did,
Right.
playing instruments, and that's not for everybody. I think a lot of people feel moved by that, and they feel more free to raise their hands or sing really loud, where there's other people that feel more comfortable in a traditional
Sure.
setting. But
There
you
has to be a balance.
there does, and I'm not picking on the Catholic Church, but they are very regimented. It is very much steeped in tradition. It is not someone ever breaking out in song or raising a hand or,
Right.
coming to the altar or anything like that. It is kneel, up, down, do this, take communion. It's the same things, and it's more ritual than it is religion. And there's not a lot of room for what I would say the Holy Spirit to move. And again, I'm not Catholic. My cousin is,
Yeah.
but and I've been to the Catholic Church multiple times, but it's just for me, that's where I feel comfortable because I feel like I can worship freely. I can close my eyes, I can raise my hands, I can pray out loud if I want
Right.
to, I can do whatever. And I just feel like really everybody's going to have their own
Sure.
preference and where they feel the Lord the most.
Yeah. Well, listen, obviously at the mega church I went to, it was a lot different than the, smaller Southern Baptist
Mhm.
church I grew up in. So, and I loved it there.
Mhm.
So again, I'm not totally knocking it. I think this is
Yes.
just where I am in my life. Plus, again, it just goes back to the trust issues and the no fluff and all that. I think for me, sometimes the older I get, and I'm not expecting people to be perfect, and I won't get too in depth in
Mhm.
this because this isn't what we're here for. But when I see human beings being human who openly profess how much of a Christian that they are, but it's just this repeated lifestyle of not acting like one,
Mhm.
then it makes you feel like Christianity as a whole is a facade because there's
Mhm.
so many people that are consistently, I'm not talking about just living a perfect life, but you consistently act like a heathen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
With the things that you do and the things that you say and what you do, at church versus what goes on at home or at work or just wherever. And so I think after a while of seeing that, especially from people that you really regarded
Mhm.
as someone that set the bar or was different than most.
Mhm.
You really expected more from these people. And when you see these like repeated patterns or lifestyles, it makes you think sometimes. I need a break from that. And
Sometimes I think the opposite. That's funny that you brought that up. Like sometimes I think the opposite, that there are people that treat going to church like it's an inconvenience, like, oh well, yeah, I guess we're gonna go to church, or I'm gonna, like, they won't go for 2 years and
yeah,
then all of a sudden they go for 2 Sundays and then they're not back. For them, it's like it's too much to make a sacrifice to
sure.
go sit an hour a week.
Yeah.
And I think that bothers me
Hmm.
too. And it's not that I have a problem with people that don't go to church. I'm talking about people that feel like, okay, well, I'm going to go to church because I've got XYZ going on in my life.
Right.
And I'll go for 2 weeks and then I'm not darkening the doors because everything's fine
Right.
now. And I'll go in 2 more years
Hmm.
when some other crisis
Yeah.
comes up.
Does your faith lead you or save you? And so what I mean by that is, does your faith really lead your day? Like how your day is going to look or the decisions that you make? How much does your faith play a part in your everyday living? I'm not
Mhm.
talking about when we make dumb mistakes. I'm talking
Mhm.
about overall, does your faith lead you in your everyday life? Or does your faith save you, much like what you were talking about? You just kind of live your life and go about your day. And when something happens in life,
Mhm.
you need that faith that you call on as your faith. When something happens where you need God
Mhm.
or you need the church, then you wanna get in the Word or you want to show up at church, much like you said, whether it's for 2 weeks or for 6 months. And again, that's a fine line
Mhm.
because in tough times, we do need to
We
be
do.
in that space.
Mhm.
So, I don't want it to come across as, if you're not all in, hit the road.
Oh, no.
But, you know, but personally, if you could self-evaluate and you in general, does your faith lead you or save you? Does it
Mhm.
save you in times of trouble or hardship? And then, okay, I got through this, so let me
Mhm.
go on with my life.
Mhm.
I really believed 100% in my heart everything that I believed and
Sure.
everything that I was hearing at church and in small group, and that's just where I was in my life.
Right.
I really, truly was in it at
Mhm.
that time.
Mhm.
And so I guess maybe we all, or at least me, have moments where we kind of backslide a bit or get out of that habit. I think so deeply about things. I don't
Mhm.
know that everyone really knows that about me or would think that would be me, but who did say I just bought her book? Gina Garth.
Yes.
I was born a blue person. I feel
Mhm.
things deeply, and I
Mhm.
connected to that. So, I don't know. I'm losing my train of thought because 'cause I'm kinda going off on a tangent, but
Yeah. I think, just to be completely transparent, I think my faith guides me every day, but I need God's mercy and grace every single day because of this mouth. I mean, I read my word every day. I mean,
Mm.
it is rare that I miss a day, rare. And I'm always hungry to read other things or watch other pastors,
Yeah.
videos or go on YouTube or whatever. And I think my faith guides me in my decisions, like where I'm trying to do the right thing for people at work or do the right thing for the company or do the right thing for my family. And so I think it is a big part of me, but I fall short every day. And I often go to bed saying, Lord, forgive me for
Mhm.
my mouth and my attitude. I think it's a living thing. Your faith is not just, oh, I'm perfect or oh, I'm not.
Yeah.
I think it is a living thing. And it's a heart posture too, because God knows you're not perfect. God is reading your thoughts. He knows exactly what you're thinking. And if I don't even say it out loud, He knows what I'm thinking. And so my problem is I say a lot of it out loud, but I think everybody has a different experience. But I think if you're hungry and you want to know God's heart, you just have to ask Him. My problem again is I'm not quiet long enough to let him speak to me. He's
Mhm.
talking to us all the time, but you know, I would like to think that I'm doing the right thing, but a lot of times I'm not.
Have you ever had any bad or negative experiences with church or with I say a shoot off of the church or a branch of the church, like with a small group or a ministry or anything like that? Can anything ever come to your mind where at the time you thought this something just doesn't feel right about it, or you look back on it? Because I have one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've been around some people that I felt were fake, and we all are fake in our own way.
Hmm.
But when I feel like you're not sincere, you're not a sincere person, that's hard. And so when I've been around that at church where it's just this ultra religious, um, churchy speak and nobody's being real and it's not okay to have a bad day,
Yeah.
I have a real hard time with fake
Hmm.
and I can
Yeah.
smell it.
Same.
Um,
Same.
from a mile away.
Yeah.
So I have a hard time with that when I feel like someone's intentions maybe aren't
Yes.
pure.
Yes.
Um, but I also know that a lot of times that's just who they are trying to
Yeah.
seem more perfect than they really are. Um, but I think one of the most confusing things for me, and it did not push me away from the Lord, it pushed me closer to Him to try to understand. But I was angry, is, my marriage.
Mhm.
And that was really tough because we were very involved in the church. And like I said, target on the back, right? So some people are not able to handle that, and some people are.
Yeah. We were talking about something earlier where you had mentioned people need to feel comfortable at church and, worship how you want to and what
Mhm.
makes you feel comfortable. And there should not be one particular way to do it. And so it reminded me, well, it's actually something I've never forgotten, but I didn't really pick up on it until later in my experience with this and then afterwards looking back. But there was a ministry that I used to be a part of. And when there were certain times throughout the night or throughout the, I'll just say conference or whatever, that we were doing, we would always have a time of just music and worship and that sort of thing, which was fine. And I am not one to be big and bold. Like, I don't raise my hands. I don't, like, I think a lot when songs are playing and when music's playing, or, when you're in church and they'll have the words up on the big screen, like when a song is playing. I can know every word of the song, but I am still looking up at that screen and I'm reading the words as I'm singing. That's just me. It's a visual for me. That's just how I connect. I can be
Mhm.
very tangible. I like visuals, that sort of thing. So I can just be standing there. I might be swaying back and forth a little bit, or crying half of the time because
Mhm.
I'm getting emotional.
Mhm.
I'm thinking about things while the music's playing. And even at times, like in my bulletin, something would come to mind during a song or just a time of reflection and you being in the moment with yourself and God, where I'd want to write things down. It was like it was bringing something to my brain to the forefront of deal with this or talk about this or a memory of this or whatever.
Mhm.
So that's how I worship. And there would be times where it was pressured upon us to raise your hands, let me hear you sing, that type of thing. Well, that's not me.
Mhm.
And I don't want to do that. That makes me uncomfortable. I feel like I'm being showy by doing that. Not that I think anyone else is if they're in the moment, but I don't want to be told how I need to be thinking and acting during this time because
Mhm.
I can assure you there's a lot going on within me while these songs are being played or while this person is up singing. You know, when I sit down and I'm writing down something, I'm not writing a grocery list. You know, I'm not doing any of that. The tears that come down from my face, it's not because I'm thinking about an argument I had with my husband or my kids yesterday. I don't really go to church much these days anymore, and it has nothing to do with that because I went to church years after that. But it's one of those things where because someone else has a vision for something and
Mhm.
how something needs to be and appear for I don't want to say spectacle, but because maybe they think if you're not doing certain things or acting a certain way, you're not feeling the spirit. The spirit's not moving within you.
Mhm.
It's always stuck with me. But um, I just don't want to ever tell anyone or make anyone feel like they have to worship a certain way because I
Yeah.
think it looks differently for everyone.
Well, I think if it's forced upon you, it's not authentic.
Excuse me.
I mean, we've got the chokes this evening.
Well, part of it's I won't shut up, and these margaritas always make my throat dry, so I don't know why I keep drinking it.
Well,
So
I
I'm
had a
sorry.
little coughing fit too.
Sorry. Go ahead.
But I think if you have to tell someone how to worship, that's not really healthy either. I mean, they should, again, if they are embarrassed to do something because they feel like they'll be judged, I think it's okay to say, it's okay to raise your
Sure.
hands or sing or whatever.
Right.
But if you don't feel comfortable doing that, I don't think it's
Yeah.
anyone's right or place to try to make you do
Well, and it
that.
was always like this would be said was, well, you should be jumping up and cheering for Jesus and for God and singing and dancing and all this. Like, would you jump up and scream at a football game?
Mhm.
That whole analogy that
Mhm.
people have said, well, that's what I'm supposed to do at a football game. Okay, I'm at a sporting event. I'm supposed to stand up and act like a crazy person when my team scores. Like, that's what you're supposed to do. And you know what? If not, then you don't. But I think your inner being can be excited about Christ or God, but it doesn't necessarily have to be for everyone to see either. That always rubbed me the wrong way when they wanted to use the sporting events as if, well, oh, you care about more about football than you do Jesus. No, I actually don't,
Mhm.
but I just don't worship the same way that you do.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. I do think it's a very personal thing. Your
sure,
faith and your relationship with God is very personal. Um, but I do think it's important to have community
sure,
so that, iron sharpens iron,
absolutely.
so that you're able to especially have support. I wouldn't have made it through
Same.
one of those hard times in my life without just prayer and that checking on me and
Hmm.
the support and all of that, and so I'll be forever grateful for
Yeah,
that. And there's some heavy things that people are dealing with, and those small groups or Sunday school or whatever you call it, if you have the right group and people feel comfortable taking that mask off,
yeah,
then I think that's where you can do your most growing.
right. If you feel like you can't share and talk and go through life's challenges with people, then you need to find new people,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
But you also have to be that person for someone too. I mean, we keep saying what needs to happen and what we should expect from other people. It's got to
Yeah.
be reciprocated. We have to be that person for someone else too.
Yeah. And that's tough. When I've led groups, that's tough because I want to be that person for somebody, but typically it's people within the group that
Right.
they don't want to hang out with the leader. Now that we're looking back some more about having a bad experience, I did have a bad experience when I was going through all of that um, with a small group, and it didn't end well. So, you know, you're right. You have to find your group, and
Yeah.
not every small group is going to be for
No.
you, and you're not going to feel comfortable. And everybody's got a different
Yeah.
background. So,
It's not always going to be a good fit, like with anything.
yep.
And I think sometimes we feel pressure on, well, I'm at church. I'm in this small group. This has to work. It needs to
Yeah.
work right.
Yeah.
I'm with like-minded people and like-minded females, and we all kind of believe the same thing. Why is this not working out? But
Hmm.
sometimes personalities just clash.
Yeah.
Or maybe you're in a little bit different stage of life
Yep.
than most of the other people in your group. So
Yeah.
it's okay to shop around,
It
you
is,
know?
and it's not okay to project the feelings that you have about those people
Right.
about your relationship with God,
Right.
right? I think a lot of that's what I was kind of trying to allude to earlier is like you've had a bad experience with religious people, or you've had a bad experience with certain groups, and so you say all Christians are bad, or
Right.
that's not my thing,
Right.
and maybe it's not, but don't let your one or two bad experiences with people that are not perfect
Right.
ruin your relationship that is a personal thing.
Right.
That
Yeah.
would be like, I had this bad experience with this one woman, and so you and I can't be friends anymore because you're a woman.
Right.
Like, that's so silly,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So we've all got to do what's best for us. I was going to close this out with one
Okay.
final thought.
Okay.
I like some data. I looked up how many times the word faith is used in the Bible. In the King James Version, wording varies slightly between versions. 247 times. The NIV, which is the New International Version, which is what I tend to
Me
read,
too.
230 to 240 times. So when you have him in front of you every day or ever so often, you don't need faith. You know he's there.
Mhm.
But once Jesus comes on the scene, that's really when you have to have faith.
Yeah.
Is he says, I'm leaving and I'll leave my spirit with you.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. Well, what a great conversation. I
Yeah.
think this was a good one.
Much needed.
Yeah.
All right. Well, wrapped up. We've got one more to go.
One more to go.
All right. Y'all have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.